Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast, the only local, politically liberty-minded conservative program in Kootenai County where we expose political power players, politicians, and political influencers. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. We'll be taking calls throughout the program. That number is 208-366-4671, right down there at the bottom of your screen, anytime during the program. If you call in, we'll put you in the queue. You got to sit there on the line until I bring in. Too nervous to make a phone call? You can comment throughout the show by just typing those questions right into the comment section. And if you're watching us live, be sure to click that share button on whichever platform you're watching tonight, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, X, or Instagram. And if you're listening back on our podcast, we urge you, be sure to catch us live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's more fun that way. And now here's your host, Dan Wilson.
Hey, folks. I'm not certain how many of you are online tonight versus watching the various sporting events that are going on, but if you are joining us right now or tomorrow or whenever, we have many things to talk about today, right? Resulting in things happening right here in Kootenai County, Idaho. And of course, we talk occasionally about things that are national and statewide. We're going to focus primarily today on things right here. Now, what happens when there is a policy by a sheriff's office where deputies must abide by this policy or face possible discipline? What happens when the sheriff himself doesn't abide by those policies? Does the deputies have a way out if they come under discipline? And also, if the Republicans are going to issue a concurrent resolution, talking about how bad any kind of violence, political dissension is, are they going to abide by the same rules that they are asking the Democrats and others to abide by? Those are important. Remember, folks, it's not about what you preach, but what you tolerate. So we're going to talk about some of these things going on. We're going to talk about social media, all the different comments. I love them. I get a kick out of them. They're my entertainment throughout the day and the week and the night.
Always a little pick me up.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about all these things right now.
We want to thank one of our affiliates, Midday Squares. Dan and I have talked about these little treats a little bit. I don't have one to show you because I ate the last one.
You did.
Whoops. I ate the last one. Our favorite is cookie dough. But I put the link in the comments section. You click on that, you're going to get 15% off of your order, thanks to the Liberty Without Compromise program. And then I also saw another value on their website that when you put your email address in there, you get another, I think, $5 off.
$5.
So you're going to get a deal. But it's a functional chocolate bar. So I think I've breezed over this mostly in our other programs because we had a lot going on. But it's when you're kind of tired of being a little chunky, but you still want your sweet snack.
Why'd you just look at me? Why did you just look at me when you said that?
You. Oh, I know your workouts. You're good. But yeah, you're kind of like, you're watching, you're tired of being a little chunky, but you still need that snack. Either midday, for me, it's always after dinner and sometime before bed, and I have a bit of a sweet craving. So you can help curb that. These are delicious. They're delicious. You're not compromising with some of those high protein, really high protein bars, and they've got the replacement sugars and they kind of upset your stomach. This is the real deal. It's less sweet, so as a kid, I might would have, been like, Mom, what's this? But they're perfectly sweet and they satisfy that craving. They've got protein and other goodness in them.
It's starting to sound like an infomercial.
No, it's just they're good. They are good. They're good. So if you're not sitting there eating one while you're watching, you're missing out.
Now remember, if you have not already done so, go to the Liberty Without Compromise website, which is what? LibertyWithoutCompromise.com?
Yeah, did you almost forget? No, it's just
LibertyWithoutCompromise.com. I think you have a few things that you've added this week.
I did, yeah. Let me share the screen while Dan was bringing that up. Of course, I'm half paying attention.
Well, you do the hardest work here, so.
But one of those things that we've been working hard on is launching a new let's see, what do we call it? The cowboy collection in our apparel and accessories line. So I think it's up on the screen right now.
Yeah, it looks great.
But these are pretty cool. This is a custom logo, and you might recognize the guy on the front there. But
is he chunky?
I mean, not recognize that guy, the guy on the shirt.
But is he chunky?
He's a little chunky.
Yeah.
This one's a little chunky. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So head on over to libertywithoutcompromise.com. You get your apparel. There's really cool trucker hats, all different styles of t-shirts for men and women. So yeah, knock yourself out on that one.
Liberty without compromise. What is this? Well, Dawna and I have been talking quite a bit the past week about this false, argument. Republican versus liberal, conservative versus liberal. All of these false names. What do they really mean? What do they actually inspire others to do or not to do? I'm really urging most of you out there to reject this moniker of conservatism, because for the past 2 years, especially right here, I hear the word conservative thrown around all the time. And I think it's pretty much whatever anybody makes it out to be.
Well, yeah, we were sitting down one night and exchanging ideas, as we often do at the end of the day. And you said, you know what? That word conservative, I don't even like that word conservative.
Not anymore, I don't.
It used to be a simple thing, I guess, to put yourself in that position. Well, I'm not liberal and I have conservative ideas, conservative financially, conservative politically. So it seems like an easy enough explanation, and then as to who you'd identify with. And then, as you were starting to say, you get here in Kootenai County, you run as a Republican conservative with all these conservative ideals, and you were met with a bunch of fire-breathing dragons. Yeah. I mean, you
some of them had really bad breath too. I'm gonna just say out there.
You're like, whoa, step back.
Reagan Republicans. No, so I want to urge all of you out there to think about why you're calling yourself a conservative. Why are you calling yourself a liberal? Have we just become accustomed to saying, well, if I'm not for Marxism or communism or you name it, then therefore I am a Republican or I am a conservative, or vice versa? We need to be going back, since we are part of a constitutional republic. Remember, we consent to be governed by those that are representing us. Are you working towards being people of liberty or people of tyranny? I think many of you, if you really studied what the founders had to say, you might be shocked a little bit about their views on liberty. Now, where does this term liberty come from? Well, the founders, as they were framing the Constitution, in fact, it went even way before that. Our founders, our framers, were studiers, and they all believed in this natural law. John Locke, the philosopher, it was 100 years before them, who wrote his 2 treatises of government when he argued that all men are creatures of God. Because they are creatures of God, they are created by him equal in importance, equal in value. And every man, every woman, every child has the right, as in the natural world, to life, liberty, and property. And remember that if you don't have liberty, that is your ability to go out and seek good things, things that you want to pursue, things that you want to build, relationships, intellectual property. If you don't have the liberty to do those things, then you're not going to have property. Intellectual property, personal property, generational property. And also, if you don't have the liberty to protect yourself, to stand up for yourself and to live, then you don't have the right to life if you don't have the liberty to protect yourself and your life. So when we think about liberty without compromise, what we truly mean is we want to live the way the founders intended us to live, and ultimately the way God intended us to live. Now, we all do have to live by rules, common things that we all agree upon when we consent to be governed in a group. And that is why we have laws, and we are a nation of laws. So it's not a free-for-all. And to my good friends out there who believe in anarchy, and I guess they're now calling it volunteerism.
Yeah.
Not anarchy as in anonymous, but those that believe, we really shouldn't have really any government. The reason why I argue the way I do now is because we live in a constitutional republic. That is, like it or not, that is the form of government that we live in. That is the constraints on which we operate. So therefore, that is why the arguments are the way they're presented. But we are a nation of laws, and that goes for our leaders. Now, the federal government was set up originally to be an agreement between the original 13 states. It was designed to give limited power for all the states to come together for certain purposes, and then everything else was left up to the states, and we now have this reversed. We have so many federal laws. I've read a book called 3 Felonies a Day that argues that every one of us is most likely committing felonies each and every day without even realizing it. We have law upon law upon law. But liberty is also freedom. And if we want to get out of this burden that we have been put under, this tyranny, by those that call themselves Republicans, by those that call themselves conservatives, then you have to learn to live like men of liberty, men and women. You have to change your thinking. You have to go back and read what those brilliant men had to say, and also read, equally just as important, the anti-federalists, those that did not want a centralized government, that did not want a constitution. Read their arguments, but use this all better to become men and women of liberty without compromise. Speaking of laws, we have the rule of law in this country concerning how law enforcement does its work. When I was a police officer for 12 years, I had to conform to make certain that I never violated anybody's constitutional rights as found in the Bill of Rights, their First Amendment rights, their Second Amendment, their Fourth Amendment, their Fifth Amendment. And we were drilled often on how to prevent ourselves from going to court, to the Supreme Court, or having the Supreme Court make rules about officers that violate other people's rights that end up changing the way law enforcement does its work. Every police department, every sheriff's office operates not only under the law, they enforce the law, but they also have policies. Policies are very important because it sets the standard for what the employees have to adhere to. What is the level of expertise they must rise to? How must their performance be measured? What are the things that they are prohibited from doing? And what are the consequences for not doing those things that you are required by policy to do? Policy is the most important thing that you can have inside any organization, especially in modern day law enforcement. And so a couple weeks ago, we saw a town hall event. You who have been following us for the past month have heard us talk about this many, many episodes. But the Republican Central Committee hosted a town hall event at a local Coeur d'Alene high school on a Saturday. It was advertised for everybody to come to have a conversation with their legislators. And of course, there was a little bit of disruption that took place. I am not a fan of disruption. I think that we must always remain civil. But as a result, action was taken by law enforcement. And we're going to take a look at the following video for those that have not been following. For those that have been following, it's good to keep watching these over and over again because we all learn from it. But we're going to talk about what the sheriff did, who he directed, and whether or not he himself was following policy. So here is a warning. There is going to be foul language in this video clip. If you are at all sensitive to the F word, you're going to not want to listen. If you have little kids, boot them out. But for those of you who want to watch this, let's go ahead and play that clip. It's about 2 to 3 minutes. We're going to watch it, and then we're going to break it down, and we're going to have a discussion.
I'm simply over talking you because your voice is meaningless right now. And we're just taking care of the rabble rousers. And eventually what's going to happen is everything's going to settle down, and we'll get back to hearing the legislators. Because really, you didn't come here to listen listen to me. I just happen to have a nice loud voice and a big microphone. And I can talk over all of you. And I can just talk for on and on and on. And look at this. This little girl is afraid to leave. She spoke up, and now she doesn't want to suffer the consequences. Isn't that the problem that we're struggling with so many of the kids today? Is they want to behave poorly and then not struggle with the consequences.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I can just talk for on and on and on.
I want to pull a few things here again. Once again, this public town hall event, the lady that you see in the forefront of this video is Dr. Teresa Bornpole. She is a known Democrat that has run for office several times. An activist might be appropriate. I don't know. She's been called an activist.
Yeah.
But right prior to this, you have once again a legislator saying something. She spouts out loud. Does this include, I think, Phil Hart, Senator Phil Hart, that was, has been accused and had to pay back the state for lumber that he took that wasn't his. And I think there was a federal income tax agreement that he had to come to for not paying his back taxes. But Ed Baharana, who's running his mouth, keeps talking to her and the people in the audience, and he's escalating this, and she's shouting back. So now you have Sheriff Norris here in the background coming up to her, telling her she has to go. She basically says, I don't think so, while Ed Baharana keeps running in his mouth and screaming. Now, watch what happens next, because this is what we're specifically going to talk about. We're going to have a discussion. I don't know that I have the right answer, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. So let's keep watching.
It is shameful. I think what we've got right now is a situation where these folks are trying to filibuster and shut this whole program down. Unfortunately, they're being successful. So all of you who came here to hear the legislators, I applaud you for sitting there and quietly listening. I promise we will get back to you. In the meantime, we've just got to be a little aggressive with some of these folks here.
I will call the police.
No, I shouldn't be removed. I should be allowed to cry and yell and scream. I should be able to allow to interrupt.
Come on, let's go. Don't touch her. This isn't a sheriff. Excuse me, Sheriff Norris. This gentleman is assaulting me.
You out
this
now.
Man is assaulting
you out
me.
now. Let's go.
This man is assaulting me. Is this
out
your
now.
deputy? Is this your deputy? No, don't fucking touch us. Is he a deputy? These are deputies. Who the fuck are these men?
So how about that?
Hey.
It's too bad that we have some 150-year-old Social Security recipients who lose their paychecks. We know that government has been mismanaging money for decades, and we want us to get up there now.
Who are these guys? Show your badge. Who the fuck are you?
Cooperate, it'll be 100 times better.
Yeah, that's what they say to rape victims, you fucking piece of shit. You refuse to identify yourselves. Who are you? Who are you?
To come here today, and I applaud them for doing so. Thank you for coming. But the problem is this. They didn't come here to listen. They came here to interrupt.
Okay. We cut off a little bit of the front of that video where Bob Norris, you've seen it, Bob Norris goes and grabs Teresa Bornpole 2 times. And then when he can't effect the arrest, he then goes and he solicits, he orders those 2 unmarked men who we find out afterwards are security to come and to, in essence, effect the arrest. Now, people are asking, Dan, why are you talking about this? This is a month ago. It's old news. Why are you bringing it up? Well, because records requests take time. When you submit a records request, the great folks at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office that bore the brunt, I have no doubt, of the wrath of the community and the nation days after when they were inundated with what undoubtedly was hundreds of records requests over this event, but it does take time. And so we're talking about this somewhat delayed because of the amount of time that it takes in order to get the information that we need. But we have a slide. We're going to go to slide number 1 because we're going to show a few things here. Now, Bob Norris had earlier threatened to use pepper spray, which is a use of force. He did not use that, but he threatened it. Sometimes that can be a technique that law enforcement uses to try to get compliance. They'll bluff. But more importantly, there was hands-on with a woman. And the courts are going to decide whether or not her civil rights were violated, either First Amendment or Fourth Amendment. We're going to talk a little bit about seizing of the individual. Now, use of force is anytime you have to use force to overcome somebody's resistance to your lawful command. And it can be all the way up to shooting. It can be as simple as you grab somebody and turn around, put them in cuffs. Now, soft-handed techniques are those techniques where you're not using an impact weapon. You're not using a baton. You're not using a taser. You're not using closed fists, but they are arm grabs and arm bars and manipulation. So the question that I have for those of you out there that are not law enforcement, but especially for my friends that are law enforcement, per your policies when you were serving or if you're currently serving, as we go to slide 1, we're going to talk about what Kootenai County Sheriff's Office has to say about their use of force. You can see that Bob Norris in that one video there, that still he had his patrol flashlight on him. We know that he had his Sheriff's Office ball cap on and he was wearing his star underneath his coat. It looks like my slide here did not translate as well as I wanted it to, so I'm going to have to read off of my my backup slide. But I'm going to read to you what the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office has to say about use of force. So anytime there's a use of force, it is mandatory reporting. Reportable use of force incident is defined as an incident in which any on or off duty KCSO member within the scope of their authority uses a non-lethal control device or any physical force beyond the soft, empty-handed control level in the continuum of force. 2, compel a person to comply with the deputy's directions or overcome resistance by a suspect during an arrest or a detention. For my friends, law enforcement friends, at what point do you think, or did it cross the line when it comes to the amount of force that was used on Teresa Bornpole? When you look at the fact that Bob Norris himself put his hands on her and was not able because he's physically not capable, probably due to his 12%, 13% respective shoulder injuries, he's getting his $180,000 a year retirement disability over from Los Angeles. He in essence, right then and there, deputizes these 2 civilians and eventually a third and possibly a fourth joined up to grab the woman and to forcefully remove her. So my question is, do you think that per this policy, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office policy, that says that a reportable use of force incident is defined as, and we just talked about it, an incident in which any on or off-duty KCSO member within the scope of their authority uses a non-lethal control device or any physical force beyond the soft, empty hand control level in the force continuum. They are to report it to the appropriate watch commander, who shall investigate all such incidents and complete the use of force report form, SHR 140, and forward the report to the appropriate division commander. Now, Bob Norris does have the ability, per policy, to completely absolve whatever policy he doesn't like whenever he doesn't like it. But my question to my friends here is, do you think that if you are going to, as a sheriff, take some kind of forceful action on a citizen, on duty, off duty, doesn't matter per this policy, do you think that you should be setting an example for your deputies by completing a use of force report or any report, since you're the one that instigated this police action? And my answer would be Absolutely. If you, when I was on patrol as a reserve officer in my own car, pushing and shagging calls, I was always reminded, you catch them, you clean them, which means nobody's going to come and do your work for you. You start, instigate something, you're the guy that sees it all the way through. So you could argue and say, well, his technique when he was grabbing her arm was soft-handed, open, no big deal.
Part.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about the 3 guys that he ordered under his authority to grab her? Again, they could say, well, they were just overcoming her active resistance. She was down on the ground. But again, best practices. I requested out of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, please provide the following information regarding Sheriff Norris's use of force against Dr. Bornpole at the KCRCC hosted town hall on 2/22/25, located at the Coeur d'Alene High School. Number 1, a use of force report is required per KCSO policy volume 1 700.04F or any later additions to include SHR 140. Number 2, any report, primary or supplemental, completed by Sheriff Norris relating to the incident. So not just the use of force report, but also additional reports. Either it's a primary arresting officer or as a supplemental to another officer that was acting as prime. And what I received was typical. No records known to exist. And I've asked around. I've talked with command. My source in command confirms nothing was done. So how can a sheriff hold any of the deputies to a standard, even in discipline, if he himself refuses to do the very things in a very public setting, such as what he did? If you're not going to at least write a report, if you're going to say that you don't have a use of force, I was always taught it's better off to write that use of force report and let the supervisors that review those to determine the validity of those and to file them appropriately.
Would they withhold doing it because then it would be an admission of use of force of some kind?
I don't know how to answer that other than to say it could
Speculation.
Be speculation.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as they're saying, look, per our policy and per state law, there is no violation, so therefore it wasn't appropriate. You have to go back to your training and experience. But what about the regular reporting? He says that he was trespassing her. That gave him the lawful authority to seize her, to arrest her, to manhandle her. And then he pawns her off to the Coeur d'Alene police officers that show up and say, hey, I want her trespassed, which they declined to do. So deputies, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, what do you say? You are before your internal affairs over a use of force. You didn't do something per policy. Is your argument now that, well, if the sheriff is not required to do these things, if he does not set the example, are we required to rise to the level that the sheriff thinks is acceptable and allowable, or are we held to a different standard? That's a question for my friends out there.
For those of you who are joining us a little bit later here in the program, we've had a bunch of you log on. Reminder that you can call into the show if you do want to chime in on this topic or you've had experience in the arena. If you are on active duty and want to remain nameless, we're good with that. The number is 208-366-4671. Again, that's 208-366-4671 for those of you watching us live.
Policies matter as the leader of any organization. If you don't do the things that you require your people to do, you are an ineffective leader, you are a hypocrite, and you are not cultivating a culture of responsibility and authority. These are things that you have to ask if you're in Kootenai County right now for a man. And those of you that are just catching up to speed that don't already know this, I ran against Bob Norris for sheriff last year in 2024. And I vowed, because I think he is such an abysmal failure and horrible for this county, that I'm going to continue taking the boots to him every chance I get, because the people in the county, you aren't experts in law enforcement. You just see a happy guy that wears a drop leg holster and a Colonel Sanders tie when he runs around to all of his social events.
The best sheriff, I think, any county
everybody
in America
thinks
could have.
that he's this great guy, and he is a massive liability. Now, let's also talk about the KCRCC. We all know that the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee has doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on their response towards this event, this town hall. And they are doing everything they can. It has been said to me, I don't have this for gospel truth, so this is, again, opinion, question, whatever you want to say, that Brent Reagan, who is the chairman of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee from around 2015, 2016, Californian, that came up here some time ago, a trust fund baby from what I understand. He also happens to be chairman of the Idaho Freedom Foundation policy think tank down in Boise. Lots of influence, lots of funding of things. So we know that Brent is adamant that he did nothing wrong, that the KCRCC didn't have any culpability in this event. They weren't responsible for not having adequate security. Security that was high speed. Sorry, Paul, brother. I owned a security company for 10 years. And what I saw was the stuff that you're going to be on YouTube famous for a long time.
It seems like to me that their best defense they're trying to create, and I understand that they're backing it up with code. I'm going to go in retrospect and say Idaho code, but it seems like because he's the sheriff and because his intentions are good, that's how it's being framed. His intentions are good. Yeah. And so therefore he can act on good intentions and then find the legal cause to fit the actions at that time.
And I'm basically dragging this out too far. I need to speed this up because I'm belaboring this. But today it was brought to my attention, not certain when it was written, but it has to be just soon. And I think this is the influence of Brent Reagan and the Idaho Freedom Foundation on the state legislature to get them to help run cover for the KCRCC so that, the KCRCC and the GOP and Idaho are viewed as victims.
Right.
And I'm going to read this House concurrent resolution, which means the Senate and the House are agreeing upon this at the same time. This is slide, was it number 2?
I got that up.
I'll read it real quick here. In the House of Representatives, House concurrent resolution number 17 by the State Affairs Committee, first regular session 2025, the 68th legislature. Be it resolved, let's go back. A concurrent resolution stating findings of the legislature and denouncing acts of political violence and intimidation. Be it resolved by the legislature of the state of Idaho, whereas the foundation of a free and civil society is the ability to engage in open and respectful political discourse without fear of violence or retribution. And whereas recent events in North Idaho have involved acts of violence and intimidation, including the disruption of a public meeting by pulling a fire alarm. I'm going to jump in here. That was allegedly Teresa Bornpole at, I believe, a North Idaho College meeting where the I don't know, event got heated. She was never charged because they couldn't prove it, but everybody pretty much believes that she was the one that pulled this fire alarm, kind of like a congressman did, to cause a disruption. Not acceptable, period. That's BS. An assault on a trustee. Now, that trustee, I believe, would be Todd Banducci, who was on the North Idaho College board. Todd handled himself pretty good on that one. The arson of a legislator's place of business. Now, I believe that's referring to the woman who was a Democratic operative. Don't know that. Again, some of those are sketchy to me. But during the 4th of July, she did not like the representative that it is. I can't think of his name now. Rasner.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll think of his name. Sorry, brother. Anyway, burned his place of business, the Army surplus down in Sandpoint.
Okay, yeah.
And So that's what I'm pretty certain that's referring to. Arson of legislators' place of business, threats to burn down a legislator's residence. That's probably Jordan Redmond, and threats to murder a legislator. And again, that one's not coming to mind. So they're obviously pulling out things that have happened right here in Kootenai County.
Right.
Whereas the acts of violence and intimidation are unacceptable in a constitutional republic and have no place in the political process of the state of Idaho, and whereas political disagreements must be resolved through debate, due process, and democratic means rather than through threats, destruction, or harm to individuals or property, and whereas such acts of violence and intimidation do not represent the values of the people of Idaho, who respect the rule of law and the democratic process and principles of free speech and civil discourse, and whereas law enforcement agencies should be fully supported in investigating and prosecuting acts of political violence to ensure that justice is served and to deter future threats and attacks, but such agencies must also be held accountable to ensure they are not selectively enforcing laws based on political considerations, and whereas all elected officials, public servants, and citizens, regardless of political affiliation, deserve to feel safe in their communities and places and work. Okay, so here's a lot of stuff in there. Again, specifically written, in my belief, to make the poor KCRCC and North Idaho look like victims. Again, nobody believes that any of this stuff should be happening. I don't think we need any kind of special announcement saying we denounce violence. A couple of things here that I think that they need to live by, the KCRCC. Whereas such, go back up to line 19, where it says, whereas such acts of violence and intimidation do not represent the values of the people of Idaho who respect the rule of law, the democratic process, and the principles of free speech and civil discourse. Political disagreements must be resolved through debate, due process, and democratic means. That means that you bums at the KCRCC running your town halls need to do a better job allowing people who are not part of the KCRCC, who are independents, who are Democrats, the opportunity to actually address their representatives, especially since you guys run the majority in the state. So that blade does cut both ways. Goes on, they say some interesting things here again, which is, to me, a underhanded slap at Chief White, Coeur d'Alene Police, and the city prosecutor, because they want law enforcement to be held accountable, making certain they're not selectively enforcing laws based on political considerations. Whereas Idaho leaders must take firm and unequivocal stand against all forms of political violence and intimidation to preserve public trust in our institutions and to uphold the state's commitment to law and order. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the members of the first regular session of the 68th Idaho Legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate concurring therein, that the legislature hereby denounces acts of political violence and intimidation in the strongest possible terms and commitments to fostering a culture of respect, civility, and lawful engagement in the democratic process. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be transmitted to the governor in the state of Idaho, the attorney general, local law enforcement agencies to reaffirm the state's commitment to maintain law and order, protecting public officials and citizens from politically motivated violence. Okay, cool. I am so proud of my North Idaho representatives that took their time to write all this out, to show what real victims, you guys read between the lines, you guys have been the real victims. And yes, if your place of business is burned down, you are a victim. If somebody's making an active threat against you and your family, you're a victim. Then let's just say that, but let's also go back. When you say, in the strongest possible terms, and commits to fostering a culture of respect, civility, and lawful engagement, Ed Baharana, when are you guys going to publicly denounce that moron? Every time I listen to him running his fat mouth, what a moron. What kind of civil discourse is that? What kind of respect is that? Taunting. You made it worse. In fact, had I been on an active scene back in the day and you were a guy doing that off the side, you most likely would get stuffed in the back of a car in handcuffs because of you inciting the situation that was being dealt with. So Brent Reagan in the KCRCC state legislature, how about you also admit, why in the hell will you guys never freaking admit when you guys are wrong as well and say, you know what, this is a time for us all to reflect on our bad behavior that is also part of what has happened. And while we don't condone any of this, this is a time for all of us, Republican, Democrat, Independent, to come back and remind us that we are in a constitutional republic. So I believe this is nothing more than Brent Reagan and his attempt to try to make himself look better after this last debacle. Now, we're going to look at one slide. This is our quote of the week by the founder. This is Colonel Washington when he was serving during the French Indian War. So he wasn't our beloved General Washington of the Revolutionary War, but same man. Remember that it is the actions and not the commission that make the officer, and that there is more expected from him than the title. Sheriff Robert Bob Norris, your troops and the people demand more out of you. You may have the title, but you set the tone. KCRCC, Brent Reagan, you set the tone. We demand more out of you. We demand more out of our legislators. Not one of you had the courage to stand up and say, you know what? I will gladly meet with anybody here that doesn't think that their voices are being heard. Even if they're being disingenuous, public discourse demands that you still follow the orders of civility. I'm going to close by saying this on this topic for whether it's Bob Norris and his use of force reports that he doesn't apparently have to submit or to write, whether it's the KCRCC and this Idaho Freedom Foundation generated continuing the resolution. What can't I say? I always want to say continuing resolution. That's what the feds do. Concurrent resolution. Remember this. This is what we live by in the business world. It's not what you preach. It's what you tolerate. And if you tolerate bad behavior, violation of policies by your people, then you must expect to receive what it is that you're allowing.
Oh, we had a caller on the line, but I think they gave up. Yeah, I was going to bring them up.
Who was it?
I don't know.
Call back.
Yeah, if that was you calling in, whoever you were, give us a try back, 208-366-4671. I'm taking calls and producing and listening and ready to follow up segments all at the same time. So I'm answering the phone and you got to wait in the queue until we bring you up. We have one exciting thing. We've got a new contributing author to the website, Liberty Without Compromise. And my caller's back here, so I'm going to keep talking and try to, do this. I'll try to bring you up. Are you there?
I can hear him through the speakerphone.
Yeah, that's not great.
Can we hold him up to a mic? Maybe we could do it that way.
No, I'm gonna wait on that. I don't want to fiddle around with it. I'm sorry. Well,
this is I think we're what? 3-0 or something like that for not getting the phones to work.
Yeah. It's funny because every time I test it, it does, and then the call happens and it doesn't. One of the contributing authors on Liberty Without Compromise is Linda Cook, and published an article. Let's see, probably toward the end of last week, and that's over there on the website. I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but it's The Destruction of the Church and the Republican Party in Kootenai County was the title of that article. And a little bit on what Linda said in this, because, people got a little whipped up. So just a little tiny bit of what Linda had to say in her article. The rest of the rest of it you can read over on the website. And it is as follows. By Linda's words, so we went in search of a teaching church and walked right into the most politically active hybrid in town, a nexus of political control, personal power, and the dispensational approach to Christianity. The mess this church has created is much more subtle because it has the cover of solid doctrine, yet its essence is as poisonously inbred as the atmosphere of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. which the church supports with monetary largesse. The head honcho and self-proclaimed pretty big deal in this town.
Is that the same big deal that
Has
refused to meet with me?
The pretty big deal.
Because I
It's the
didn't
same
wine him
one.
and dine him. I didn't buy
Yeah.
him a big steak dinner, that guy?
He has the
All right.
facade of a humble pastor. So we had an interesting comment when we shared that post, and I'm going to do my best here to pull that up. See, a lady, a contributing commenter there on the Idaho Sheriff page in regard to Linda's article. And then probably hearing some things that that you've had to say about the church and the reception of the church when you started running. So what Connie has to say is, to you, not supporting you anymore. When you can't stop attacking the church and giving Jesus a bad name, you aren't the person I will vote for ever. I don't know the pastor you refer to, but I know what you are doing to the body of Christ, and it's not going to end well for you. God won't be mocked nor allow his body to be treated like this. You have lost all credibility with me and my support. So I'd like to know, because you don't always get a chance to have a back and forth there, but what would you have to say to Connie Ray about that comment?
Well, Connie, my guess is that you would probably be one of those people that Jesus warned us about, those that would stand by the sidelines while you saw wrong take place because you don't want to upset the Sanhedrin. You don't want to upset the Pharisees, the Sadducees. You know, you want to be a good Sunday Christian. You don't work on the Sabbath. The reality is Jesus continually called out bad behavior over and over and over and over again. He even called out people that were doing things by the book, but their hearts were evil. I guess you probably have a pat answer for when Jesus went in and decided to overturn the tables in the temple, right? You probably have an excuse as to why Jesus wasn't really sending a message to the Jews when he went and hung out with prostitutes and tax collectors, or why he allowed his disciples to gather food on the Sabbath. You must not read your entire Bible, because the Bible continually is a message of doing right versus wrong and bucking those that are doing wrong because you're afraid. I think of David and Goliath. Here you have Saul lined up on the line with all of his Israeli soldiers right along the Philistines. You have Goliath that comes out and taunts every single day. Why didn't Saul have the courage to send anybody out to fight him? Was he afraid? Likewise, when you see something wrong, as King David did when he was just a shepherd boy, you act on it. And I'm never going to apologize for calling out churches where the pastor of this large power player church right here in Kootenai County, evangelical, said the things that he said about me, the gossip that he said about me. He brought me up in one of his sermons, called me a liar, said that I lost because I'm a liar. At the same time, gaslit me. You can hear all of these conversations in our podcast, The Power Player Pastors of Kootenai County. I wouldn't buy him a steak. He's a big deal. I didn't do enough to get his attention for him to have a conversation with me. Mm-hmm. You know this. I didn't ask anybody to endorse me. I just went around saying, hey, I understand that, you know, you have a part here of leadership in the county, but the other churches that I'm famously all the time attributed to disrespecting, I'm not going to apologize. Anytime you want to market Jesus Christ, you and I are not friends. We are not of the same faith. You've missed the boat. Jesus Christ is not to be marketed. He's not to be used for propaganda or anybody else's purpose other than what he came to do. So I think I've said enough.
Another thing in social media, one day I'm going to Facebook and I'm navigating to the Idaho Sheriff Facebook page. And what, to my surprise, pops up on the screen? I find the Idaho Sheriff, the original Facebook page.
Yeah.
And then right underneath, this pops up.
Yeah.
Well, what do we have here? the real Idaho sheriff. Okay. So I'm like, what is this? Drill down a little bit more into it. Robert Bob Norris. So it kind of seems like somebody maybe was a little hurt that you took their rightful title. So he came on in and is claiming what's rightfully his. Mm-hmm. But we decided that, let's have a little fun with this. I think I'm glad that the, I guess, marketing campaign that we had for you was so compelling and so effective that they just felt we got to have it. Mm-hmm. So had a little fun with it, put it up on our Facebook page.
Remember, a year prior in the Show Your Proof Challenge, they got really spun up about the fact that I was calling myself the Idaho Sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's an arrestable offense.
Well, they were trying to cite U.S. code.
Oh, yeah.
The fraudulent activity.
They're really good at going and finding
because we know that everybody around truly believes that Dan Wilson. Oh, you know what? They probably believe me more if I wore Colonel Sanders tie and wore a drop leg holster with a revolver and a Derringer tucked in.
As one of our guys said earlier up in the comments, it's boot looking good. Yeah. So we put this post up on the Idaho Sheriff, Dan Wilson, Idaho Sheriff Facebook page. Have a little fun with it. And we had a commenter by the name of April Lee who didn't think this was so funny.
Oh, April doesn't have a sense of humor.
April does not have a sense of humor. So April says...
Well, maybe it's because it's March.
Yeah.
It's not April yet, so maybe she's
okay, you know what? I was slow on that one. I'm like, could it be February? Could it be June? I get it. So she says, you're laughable, Dan. And a disgrace. It's unbelievable you're actually calling out Sheriff Bob Norris for making a page calling himself the sheriff, a title he's duly earned, not once, but twice in a landslide vote, both times. And you mock this when you've spent 2 years going around calling yourself the Idaho Sheriff when you have not only never been a sheriff, you've never even been a certified law enforcement officer. This is definitely a poser in Kootenai County, or there is definitely a poser in Kootenai County, and it ain't Bob Norris. You're right. There should be a lawsuit against you for impersonating a law enforcement official.
Sounds like April needs to change her full body shampoo.
So, like any of us, any curious human being, you read a comment like that and you're like, well, who's April?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm going to go, there's April. I'm like, okay, business owner. Oh, studied criminal justice at Boston University.
Oh, studied. Another one of those.
Well, I don't know. I think she's worked with. Well, we'll see this in a consecutive statement. So our friend, Amy Fonstrom, who's been a supporter of Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff, amazing lady, responds back to April Lee. Because, Amy's like, I'm not letting this lies lie. So she responds back to April Lee and says, you've got it all wrong. Bob Norris is corrupt and he did not earn his position. How do you think he won by a landslide? Amy's just posing a question. Mm-hmm. Election fraud. I think maybe she's just throwing that out there. You should look more into it. Just think about it. Your blatant lies about Dan Wilson clearly stems from your obsession with Norris, which is insane. Have you done any research on Norris? Clearly not, because if you had, there's no way you would support him. All right, there's more to Amy's statement. Well, that got April. April wasn't just going to go down without a fight. So a little bit more from April.
April showers bring May flowers.
Yeah, the flowers are coming. So she says, the age of election fraud. How foolish. Because, of course, it's okay to believe that there's election fraud happening on a national level. And with your good President Trump, all hail MAGA, okay? But not here in Kootenai County. I'm not even going to entertain the idea because my guy won, so I'm all good. Bob Norris won in a landslide because he's done more for the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office in one term than was done in the previous 20.
Oh.
But my comments are not about Bob Norris. My comments are about Dan Wilson and the way he is misrepresenting himself and using the title sheriff when he has earned none of the honor or public support to use that title. If he had really had the honor and integrity to be our county sheriff, he would understand the honor of using that title and that it only comes from a vote of the people. Instead, he throws it out in his social media like it's just a name anybody can use. He impersonates the highest level of law enforcement office that exists and brings shame to himself and his supporters in doing so. If he really understood anything about wearing the badge, he would never use that title for self-promotion.
Oh, my.
So, what do you have to say? If April's joining us tonight, because she may or may not have known that we
was April the husky voice that I heard on the other end of the line?
It might have been.
maybe that.
Sorry, April. Sorry your call didn't get through. So actually, Nick Payne's got a question. I put it up on the screen because April claims he's done more than any sheriff in the last 20 years. So Nick's question is, what exactly has Bob Norris done?
Well, for starters, he gave half of the tribal lands away, patrol. He made a deal with the tribe over a helicopter. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. You have a third of the size of the county. The Bob basically, when the tribe asked to take over primary law enforcement for both tribal and non-tribal members, Bob Norris did exactly that right after a $200,000 donation from the tribe to this volunteer helicopter program that he so absolutely loves. And we know that he cross-deputized all of those guys and he quit performing basic patrol down on tribal lands. Now, in tribal lands here in Kootenai County in Idaho, under Federal Law 208, or is it 280? I'm going to forget, but you get the idea, where it allows the county sheriff to perform patrol functions for those folks that are Kootenai County citizens, non-tribal members on tribal lands. When they call for law enforcement, they're supposed to be dispatched a county sheriff over a federal law enforcement officer, which would be a tribal police member. Tribal police member would be appropriate for a tribal member living on tribal lands. Kind of gets confusing, but that's just one of the things that he did. I mean, if that in and of itself isn't a big deal, well, let's talk about the fact that we're still 21 deputies short in the jail. Now, we were promised the Deputy Sheriff's Association was largely driven by the jailers. They brought Bob Norris because they wanted Bob Norris to get them more perks and more benefits. And they formed their Deputy Sheriff's Association under the Federal Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 43, started a political action committee. Bob Norris allowed them, in violation of state law, to use the Kootenai County Sheriff's badge during the primary to put on a mailer that their PAC paid for in order to promote candidates that they supported. I mean, because we know that's the right thing to do, right? Is the sheriff that allows his command staff and his Fraternal Order of Police members that support him overwhelmingly, he allowed them, by his own words. You can find it on YouTube. He allowed them to use the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office in order to make it look like the sheriff, to those unsuspecting, don't realize that the government is never supposed to promote any one candidate because we're a constitutional republic. Well, that's what he did. We've got a helicopter that they decided to disengage with the services of the Superior Air Support Unit out of Spokane County with multiple aircraft and hoist capability for search and rescue that only cost us $10,000 a year with our memo of understanding. And what did they do? They brought in this volunteer helicopter that Lieutenant Mark Ellis, who is part of ownership of this, private corporation that's providing the services to Kootenai County. He's also the lieutenant that oversees this. And we've talked about this over and over and over again, but that bird has not flown in over 6 months. And yet we paid $10,000 of county money for a helicopter that hasn't worked. I mean, we can go on and talk about the license plate readers that were being used in Kootenai County without any kind of data retention policies whatsoever. No public was notified. They had no training, no policies. You have that going on. I mean, these are just some of the examples. 911. 911 is in such dire straits with their manpower that you have the sheriff's office having to go before the Board of County Commissioners to say, hey, we need retention bonuses because if we don't, we're not going to have any dispatchers to 911. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we don't have enough time tonight to talk about all of the bad things that Bob Norris has done.
A question from Daryl. He wants to know, is it true they're pulling officers off patrol to the jail?
I have heard that. We'll put a records request in to find out if they'll be honest with us. But we know that since November, we've lost a lieutenant, we've lost a sergeant, we've lost a couple patrol guys, we've lost some support folks. Here's one, and this is for all the Bob Norris sycophants like, Lauren and Brandy and those that are Brian Allman that just love Bob Norris. He sat there last August and told you guys in that Live X Space event where Theo Wold was on the line that he was going to participate in ICE 287. He has never to this day participated in it. There is no agreement. There is no DHS/ICE 287 agreement with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. In fact, what we do know, and I do have a slide here, is that Bob Norris has been allowing Border Patrol apparently to ride with deputies without any official agreement or understanding. They're doing it on the down low, but they still don't have any agreement, and they are making arrests, which I'm for getting those that do not belong here out of the county. But we were told for a long time that it wasn't a real issue here. Bob Norris claims that there's no human trafficking. He claimed that for month after month, and in the last month and a half of the campaign, his advisors, including a former Homeland Security agent who I guess is retired, that's also part of that Power Player Church, the big political church that Linda was just talking about, started changing it. Instead of talking about real statistics and facts, he just wanted to talk about, well, what do you mean by human trafficking? And, well, we've had these cases right here in Kootenai County, but they've all been resolved. So I can keep going on and on and on and on and tell you about the things that Bob Norris has done and has not done.
Well, and when you talk about the Lauren and the Brian Allman, and when they press Norris with what seems like on the surface is a difficult question, are you a part of ICE 287G? Skip over the answer to that. Mm-hmm. Will you be a part? Oh, right. Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Did they ever follow up? No.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And my belief is that for 4 years is exactly what Bob Norris and his administration, whoever is supporting that's exactly what they have counted on. That they can come out and answer to the public only when necessary or only on the fluff and stuff. And when pressed with a difficult question, give an answer you want to hear, and then bank on the fact nobody's going to follow up with it.
Yeah.
And that's what's been going on. Yeah. And he's still doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a person that doesn't love liberty, well, then Bob Norris is your guy. We proved over and over in the campaign that Bob Norris is a proven liar. When he continually said that he stood between a federal agency and somebody in Kootenai County and their gun rights, that was a flat out lie. We pulled the records, we published them, we showed the video of the U.S. Marshal. And once all of a sudden his narrative then changed. It was no longer him standing as an interposition between the federal government and the citizen. Well, it was his sheriff's office. He takes frequent credit when the credit is, glory. None of his Reagan Republicans, KCRCC, the History Club, none of the pachyderms, the people it's an incestuous group. They all just run from one group to one group.
We had a good question earlier in the program. I'm trying to scroll back to that, but in essence, it was: do you think that shortly after the town hall incident, specifically, that Norris came out posting pictures of MAGA stuff, and do you think that he did that in order to get the support from Donald Trump, because this was getting national attention? Well, yeah, so to come out and get that
don't support. If you say you're Donald Trump and MAGA, then automatically it's kind of like our friend that was so upset about me in church. Hey, you call yourself a Christian, you go to a church, man. Hands off. Don't attack God's anointed. Don't attack the MAGA people. The MAGA people are the ones of law and order. Colonel Sanders gets himself in a bind, and he thinks that MAGA is going to keep him out of the fray, and it's just not. Tim, I saw that you put a message in there that you had called. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I responded there on the screen. We're having issues with the phone. We will have to hands down get that 100% ironed out before we ever try it again. This is now the bane of my existence.
But we did get Ed DePriest on last week.
Yeah, that worked out. It was a little choppy. But one thing I wanted to tack onto that was about a week ago was the first time I heard a local pastor, again from a Power Player church, posting something about DIY church disciplinarians. Mm-hmm. Kind of like casting shade on how dare we have DIY church disciplinarians, which, I mean, you can draw conclusions on that. Maybe only he can say exactly what he meant, but it's like, okay, so if you're not clergy, if you're not an elder, I don't know what the definition would be of when you're worthy.
Subject matter expert.
Yeah. Yeah. We are not worthy. Yeah. One other thing, because we outdid ourselves on the hour. At libertywithoutcompromise.com, we are now accepting op-ed submissions. Yeah. And so we've got one from author Damon Darakshi, a little snippet of what he said. It was an opinion on the KCRCC Town Hall Forum, which has been a thread over the last bunch of weeks for lots of good reasons, because we don't have a solution. How can we do this better moving forward? And we haven't gotten there. But a little bit of what he has to say is perhaps someday Kootenai County can have a sincere, reflective debate with our Democratic friends by reflecting 2 examples and having some dialogue in a civil manner. We can all do better. So his full op-ed pieces over there on the website, Liberty Without Compromise. And if you would like to submit yours for consideration, you can do that there as well.
You mean we allow people to come to the marketplace of ideas?
We do.
And debate?
Yeah.
Or say their piece?
We do.
Weird.
Yeah.
Do you think KCRCC would do that? Oh, wait, they're not. They're an exclusive club.
No, what they did was they created media and periodicals to
I've heard rumors
to amplify their message.
Rumors here, so take that for what it's worth. Kootenai Journal, subsidized by Reagan and or the KCRCC.
It's just rumors. So we're just wondering.
What are some of the other ones?
Because, we've
Idaho Tribune.
We've had some dialogue with an expert earlier this week that historically knows that newspapers are not and cannot be profitable. Mm-hmm. So then when from the onset, or when you realize that they're here locally, they have to be subsidized. So if you're not 100% doing that with big time advertisers, guys, they're bought and paid for.
Kootenai Spectator.
And that's just the way it goes.
Just a question.
And they can, there can be fun made of, I'm not a Fed. Ha 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 ha, I'm not a Fed. But it's dark money. It's dark money, you guys. And if you're being subsidized by somebody, and even if you're in it and you're in the thick of it and you got, your blinders on and you don't really want to know ultimately where it's coming from, but you're tied into some dark things.
Oh, yeah. We got the Bushnell report. Now, riddle me this. If somebody has the answer for it, let me know. Full disclosure. We need to put that one up there on the Bushnell report by Ed DePriest.
Yeah, that's good.
So riddle me this. Born again, follower of Jesus Christ, follower of no church, follower of no denomination, follower of Jesus Christ, fallen sinner. Don't want my kids exposed to drag shows. Don't want them exposed to anything sexual in nature in public, including my grandson. Don't want any of that. Summer Bushnell, proven liar in court, claimed that at a drag show, which again, I would not have been a fan of, but claims the video that she got from Jeremy, whatever his name is, I can never remember his last name.
Yeah, we're just
from KXLY.
Yeah,
originally, I think he was originally with KXLY.
Yeah, don't put him there now. We don't want to get ourselves.
I think he was originally with. Yeah, Jeremy, don't sue me.
Yeah. Stop.
But gave some video. Summer started, I guess, running her mouth on all the local chat groups, saying, "Hey, this drag performer Eric Posey was showing his junk in front of a bunch of kids."
Right.
And every time you saw the video proof that she had, it was all blurred out. Now, my understanding is it was proven in court that was doctored, that she never was able to truly see anything uncovered that by law must be covered. So we're getting away from the word of conservative, but just for this argument, those of us that call ourselves conservatives,
that does actually bring this right back around.
So tell me this. I got to know this. Somebody tell me this. So you don't like what goes on and you're going to stand behind somebody because they willingly, even though they were told to stop, lied and fabricated evidence in the name of conservatism?
But that comes right back to because the intentions are good. If my end goal is good, then I can do these things that are wrong. And that's what I'm seeing over and over again in this Kootenai County Republican Party. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But my intentions are conservative. My intentions are good. And it's really gotten off the rails.
So somebody tell me, again, please send us out. My understanding, the judgment was issued against Summer, over $1 million. So if she's proven liar in court, and the testimony that I heard her say would imply that she was not truthful, why is anybody listening to her? Why does she have a voice in the local community?
It's, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, what that says to me is somebody is behind. You got dark money. And again, just a theory that somebody is behind funding certain people and many of these things. Because how could you have somebody that things went to the height that it did with her in court, and they're still, I'm going to appeal, and you still come out the other and kicking, and anybody's taking you seriously. Anybody in the conservative party is taking her seriously.
I don't take her seriously one bit. She runs her mouth frequently. I'm sorry. At one time, I gave her the benefit of a doubt. I thought that she was truthful. I gave money to her defense fund. Should never have done that. Learned lesson myself. Same thing with Hamburger Lady.
Yeah.
Same thing. Running their mouths.
I mean, Hamburger Lady might honestly think that somehow we would have just been against her because she was part of the mainstream GOP here in Kootenai County, and it wasn't the case. We really came in with an open mind and to make connections and to learn and understand the people who we thought we shared values with, conservative values with. Any final words before we wrap it up, sir?
Thank you so much for how hard you work. I want to take time to publicly state you're an amazing woman. You do amazing. You guys don't know how much work that she does on the back end leading up to this show, everything she operates. I am extremely privileged to call you friend and spouse. So
thank you.
Get a chance, shoot her a message and tell her how good she does, despite the difficulties that I'd be all thumbs. So you do an amazing job. Callers, again, sorry. As I said earlier, it applies to me. It's not what we preach, it's what we tolerate. So if I'm tolerating this, it means I'm not giving you the right resources to get these calls through. So folks, be people of liberty. Don't be a conservative. Don't be a Democrat. Don't be a liberal. Be people that live within the frames. You have a right to believe the way that you want to believe. You are ultimately responsible to God, the one who made the heavens and the earth. My belief in a literal 6 days. I know some of my friends are going to say you're whack, but I'm okay with you being wrong. We're still friends. But remember, we did not descend from
so
fearful
arrogant.
men. Yeah, we didn't. I say this over and over. We're going to close out with, if my producer gives me my music cue.
Oh, I want to make sure it doesn't run out. We did not descend from fearful men
or fearful women. We descended from people who love liberty without compromise. And they put their lives and their fortunes on the line against those like Brent Reagan and the KCRCC. Brent needs to take a long vacation away. It's time for him, like term limits. You need to go, Brent. The Idaho Freedom Foundation needs new leadership as well. I don't know what else to say.
Oh, I think you done said it.
Stay
thank you.
strong and courageous.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us tonight. You made it a fun little more than an hour. For the risk of sounding like an infomercial, as I was accused of at the beginning, I'm putting up on the screen the functional chocolate squares that satisfy your sweet cravings. In all seriousness, Dan and I love midday squares. We love our workouts. We want to stay lean and fit, but we like our sweet treats. They are good. There's a link pinned in the comments to get 15% off your midday squares. So we thank you to our affiliate there. And visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports. Submit your op-eds, read articles from our contributing authors, purchase your Liberty Without Compromise apparel, including the new cowboy collection, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, aprons, libertywithoutcompromise.com. And for our podcast, you can listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. One more thing, Facebook has implemented a new policy. They're going to be deleting live streams that are more than 30 days old. So I want you to head on over to our YouTube channel. It's The Idaho Sheriff. Subscribe to that YouTube channel because the episodes will always be archived there and you will be notified of new episodes. Same when you subscribe to our podcast, wherever you get your shows, subscribe. You'll get that automatic notification when we publish new shows.
Awesome. Next week, we're going to have special guests talking about Real ID right here in Idaho and the Trojan horse that will combine everybody's digital signature, their identification together under so-called voter integrity. and why that ties into 15-minute cities and eventual erosion on your liberty. Now, be strong and of good courage. Later.